Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Europe once again, and we're going to go to Estonia in the Baltics, and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a good few different styles, but if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're probably best known for their big kind of malty imperial beers more than anything else, although they do have some lighter things that are found more readily in Estonia itself. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I don't believe I've tried from this brewery before. It's quite an unusual style that you don't come across all that often in Europe, and it's also got a twist to it that I think has only featured on the channel once or twice before. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to go back to Estonia. We're going to go to Tallinn, the capital city, to the north of the city, to a place called Noblessner, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Põhjala Pruulikoda. So this particular beer is called Apricotta. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is an American strong ale aged in American Apricot Brandy barrels. So yeah, this comes from Pohjala's Cellar series, which always throws up some really interesting stuff. And I'm just very curious about this one. I don't think we've had too many beers on the channel that have been aged in apricot whiskey barrels. This could well be the first one, I honestly don't know. But yeah, I think it might well be the very first barrel-aged American strong ale that is featured on the channel. So yeah, this beer is interesting on quite a few counts, and not to mention the fact that it's an unusual style to find in Europe, and it comes from Estonia. So yeah, this is one that I picked up at Beer in Chimsha here in Hong Kong, and it just caught my eye because of how unusual it was. So yeah, I think this should be a nice review for number 4001, a very good Estonian brewery, and a really interesting beer actually. So yeah, hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Põhjala Pruulikoda as well, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Estonian playlist along with a number of other things, and we will be adding to that whenever we get the chance. But a good number of Estonian beers seem to be making their way out here to Hong Kong, which is very nice to see. But do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some really interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, Estonian beer, in my experience, is very good quality. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Põhjala Pruulikoda once again. So Pohjala, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Tallinn, the Estonian capital, and the company was founded by Peter Cake, N. Parel, Green Nurmits, and then they were joined quite soon as well by Tiit Pananen. But the group went on a fact-finding trip to Brewdog in Scotland after Punk IPA had reached Estonia, and it was there that two of the founders who were interning at Brewdog encountered Chris Pilkington, and he joined the company as their head brewer, and he's now a partner in Pohjala as well. But Chris had actually graduated in marketing, but he was an avid home brewer, and he was producing some really interesting things on the Brewdog pilot kit, and it was tasting these beers that inspired the Estonian guys to invite him to join them in their project. So Pohjala was officially founded as a company in 2012, and then from 2013 they began to gypsy brew at another few breweries around the Tallinn area. But they opened their first brewery in May of 2014 in the Nõmme district of the city, which is in the southern part of it, and they had an initial capacity of 12 hectolitres, but this was scaled up quite considerably over the years. But they started exporting their beer in 2015, and the brewery are now widely known across Europe and further afield. And at this original brewery in Nõmme, they had 24 taps in the tap room. But this is actually quite a common business model with the Baltic breweries, because these countries only have very small populations. Estonia is 1.3 million, Latvia is about 2 if I remember correctly, and Lithuania is like 3.2 million if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of the breweries in the Baltics, they brew bigger and they export their beers to Western Europe and things like that, and that covers a lot of their costs and things. It's a very successful business model. But for us in Western Europe and Northern Europe, we get very good beer at quite a cheap price, so we can't complain. But yeah, Pohjala were one of the very first breweries to kind of pioneer this model, and many others came after. But in 2018 they moved to a new brewery in the Noblessner shipyard in northern Tallinn, and this new brewery is equipped with a 50 hectolitre brew house. I think it's a Rolex kit if I remember correctly. You can check my out and about video that I did there if you're interested. But they've got an even bigger tap room and a restaurant there that serves American barbecue, and apparently they've recently opened up a bakery there as well, which is supposed to be very, very good. And I think that was because the chef that was working in the American barbecue restaurant, his wife was a pastry chef, so they didn't want her skills to go to waste, basically. But over the years, these guys have built up a very good reputation for the bigger, maltier beers across Europe. But yeah, they're known very well across Estonia, and they do quite a few lighter things as well, like different IPAs, some lagers and things like that as well. But yeah, mostly it's the more malty and bigger things that make their way outside of Estonia. But as of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 150 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and yeah, you really should have a go at them. The Cellar series is always pretty awesome. Really random things like this, of course. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Põhjala Pruulikoda for the moment. The only other thing I would add is that Pohjala in Estonian means like northern realm, and Pruulikoda is the Estonian word for brewery, hence yeah, Põhjala Pruulikoda, the northern realm brewery. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So just to let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one, you can see it is really quite nice. I'm not sure what the little black circle in the middle is supposed to represent, but I think the artwork on this is very nice. If I take my face out of this, the camera will focus on it a little bit more. You can see, yep, Pohjala, I'll go over here, Pohjala Pruulikoda, the thing, you can see that they're part of the Cellar series. This one has a yellow wax top on it, incidentally. I still need to get a slightly better stand for filming these videos. But yeah, that phone, the phone that I film on is quite heavy actually, so that's one of the problems. But yeah, 330 milliliter bottle, this one. This guy comes in at 12% ABV, so it is a bit of a monster. Like we said earlier, the name of the beer is Apricotta. It's a barrel-aged American strong ale, aged in American Apricot Brandy barrels, and they recommend that you serve this between 12 to 16 degrees. So I've had it out of the fridge for a wee while before. We're actually going to open this one up. But yeah, this is another one that I bought at Gerbier in Chimshatchui, and it just caught my eye because of how unusual it is. And I've never, it's very rare to come across something that is, brandy, apricot brandy barrel aged. So let's see if we can get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. I'm just going to put this on the floor to see if we can get it open. I might need to pause the video if I can't get a grip. No, I've got it. I was worried there that I would struggle to get this open, but it came off quite well. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Very curious about this. The American Strong Ale is a style that I'm not madly familiar with, but a few Americans have told me that the way to think about an American strong ale is that it's just like a more malty version of a double IPA. It's not the most well-defined style. But before the head on this one disappears, you could see that this thing poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of fawn beige coloured head, and that is just fading away very, very quickly, as you're witnessing there. It's just, you know, this side is faded away and I'm getting the rest of it fading away over toward where I'm sitting at the moment. But yeah, lovely kind of fawn coloured head on this one there, and that's just faded away to be pretty much nothing. So yeah, you can see in terms of what you might expect from an American strong ale, I don't think this is too different, to be honest with you. If I think about the colour of this is like a lovely, very dark sort of rosewood type colour. I wouldn't quite call it ebony. It's not quite black enough to be ebony. But yeah, it's got a lovely sort of stained mahogany, rosewoody type character to it. If you shine the light through the beer, it does have a little bit more of a slightly chestnutty type colour to it, but it looks nice. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head, but I mean, overall, it looks very, very nice. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, when it comes to kind of more brown beers like this, the barrel can affect the colour a little bit. But I'm guessing from the colour of this one that it might have had a slightly longer wort boil. And of course, yeah, just by the look of it, it's got a little bit of an opaque nature to it, but there is still some light coming through it, so I've got a feeling that there might be a bit of a longer wort boil thing going on with this one. But yeah, the colour of the malt in this one maybe just means a bunch of big brown sugary malts actually. So we'll just need to see how we get on with this one. As I say, the American strong ale is not the most it's not the most well defined of styles, I think we can say. But yeah, it looks lovely, this one. I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance. If we sugar the beer up, you know, you don't even get that much returning to the head. So let's have a wee look at that aroma then and just see what we get from it. But just from the little whiffs I've had so far, it smells as if it's pretty damn good. So let's look at that. Oh yeah, damn. Now, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm a big sucker for like big brown sugary beers, you know, Doppelbocks, Scotch ales, barley wines, Belgian quadruples. I love the big brown sugary ones. And this one I think is going to fit into that category quite nicely. This is really interesting because of course you've got the woody barrel in here. You can smell the American oak, the apricot sort of spirits in there too. But you've got this big like brandy soaked bready beer in there. Lots of like dried dates and stuff. This is going to be, I think this is going to be something special actually. Definitely a nice way to kick off after review number 4000, which in itself was a really damn good beer. But yeah, this is going to be awesome. So yeah, this beer is crazy. Where to start? So obviously the backbone of the aroma here is that lovely smooth American oak, and I think European oak is a bit drier than American oak. American oak has a wee bit more vanilla. You also have to remember when you go back to the biology of it that these, you know, European oak trees are a completely different species to American oak trees, so quite significant differences in there. But yeah, you've got a lovely smooth American oak in here, definitely a little bit of vanilla, and you can smell that kind of sweet brandy spirit character in this one, and you can smell the sort of dry apricot infusion into it. Gives you this, it's very unique actually. I've only tried brandy a few times, you know. I'm not overly familiar with it as a spirit, but the smell that you get out of the barrel on this is just awesome. It's absolutely lovely. Yeah, the barrel character that I'm getting off of this beer is like nothing I've ever had on the channel before actually. So this is why I like Pohjala, because they can, you know, despite being a very, very well established brewery, these guys can throw up something that will just, you know, catch you off guard and get you thinking. But yeah, the barrel character in this is absolutely lovely. But on top of that barrel character, you have a lovely big oily, cakey, brown bready beer. So you get a little bit of a like rye bready bread crust in this one, and then above that you've got this like brandy soaked sort of sponge cake type quality, like brandy soaked fruit loaf almost, I think is a good way to describe it. So there's a lot of that kind of character coming out of this one. Maybe a very slight touch of nuttiness, but that would really take a back seat to other things. Yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is it's really, really nice. So on the malty side of things, it's interesting. It's quite, on the actual malty side, it's quite straightforward. There's a lot of complexity from the barrel. There's the kind of cakey side of things, and then you've got the brown sugary type character coming out of it too, which I really like. So the brown sugars for me have a bit of a kind of, obviously they've got a bit of treacle and molasses going on for sure, but you've got a bit of this kind of lighter caramel wafery sort of thing. It's a little bit toasty as well. So yeah, there's a sort of toasty caramel wafery note to this one. Very bright, like honey type notes as well. Yeah, honey. It's got a little bit of an almost kind of spicy character to it as well, like heather honey. It's almost got a wee touch of that going on too. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of an almost heather honey type character coming out of it. Yeah, treacle, molasses, heather honey. Bit of a toasty caramel, and yeah, a wee bit of a biscuity note as well. The malty backbone in this is really interesting, but I do think we're going to get more complexity out of the actual flavour than we will out of the aroma. Yeah. On the hoppy side of things, it's quite interesting because with this thing being barrel aged, it didn't say how long it was barrel aged for. I tried to research that, but there wasn't too much information available. With this one, a lot of the hoppy character obviously will have dropped out of it, and from what I understand with American strong ales, there's not really a kind of standard hopping quality to these beers. It can vary, to be honest. But this one, you can smell a little bit of hoppy character in this. It's got a wee bit of a floral aromaticity and a wee bit of a grassiness. There's also a wee bit of a more kind of piney resinous note to the beer as well. So yeah, the way everything kind of pieces together in that regard, I think is quite interesting. But obviously with it being barrel aged, a lot of that green component will have dropped out. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind with this particular beer. But yeah, there is a wee bit of a piney resinous note to it. I'm getting a good little bit of spicy floral aromaticity, wee bit of earthiness too, and also some grassiness. But yeah, like I say, a lot of people interpret the American strong ale as being a more malty version of like a double IPA or something like that, and people have compared them to like the Imperial Reds and Imperial Ambers and things too. So that's a bit of food for thought. On the hoppy side of things, I do wonder if there's Cascade in this. There's just something about the fruity aroma in this beer that's making me think Cascade. So it has this like, you know, sultana, you know, dry white green grapey note to it, bit of date for sure. Of course, you're getting the apricot from the barrel. There's little hints of red fruity character as well, but not overly much. So yeah, you've got the apricot from the barrel, the figs, the dates, there's definitely a wee bit of figgy character in there. The figs, the dates, sultana type notes like dry pear and stuff like that as well. All in all, the aroma of this one is really quite interesting. This is one of these beers that has me a bit, you know, perplexed, if you like, from the aroma. So I'm more just very keen to taste it and see what it's all about. The other thing I've just noticed there is that there's no sediment at the bottom of the bottle there. So yeah, potentially I could have held on to this one for a wee bit longer, but no, I was too curious and wanted to try it. So yeah, let's have a look at this and see what it's all about. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer, but we're going to taste this one now. So this is the Apricotta, a 12% American strong ale aged in American apricot brandy barrels from the wonderful Põhjala Pruulikoda in Tallinn in Estonia. So let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh, and tervisex, as they say in Estonia. Should remember that. Beautiful. Ooh. That is really interesting. I'm going to say that when you first take this beer in, it's not, you know, it's not overly flavourful, but when you get into the aftertaste, it really shows you a lot more. You can feel the nice apricot barrels in there. Yeah, you can feel the nice apricot barrel in there. You get the big brown sugars, but you can feel the presence on the edge of the tongue. You can certainly feel the presence of those American hops for sure. So yeah, I think that's one of the things, that the American strong ale is quite heavy in its malt, but it's still got a good green component to it. Yeah, certainly interesting for sure. So, this beer is going to kind of open up and air up and things the more that we drink of it as well, but it is very nice, it's lovely. So, let's just break this beer down and describe it a bit more in depth. We'll start in the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely, smooth, kind of American oaky character in there. So lovely, smooth American oak. As you move further forward on that middle third of the palate, you get a wee bit of a more kind of vanilla type quality coming out of the wood for sure, and that's usually the indicator of the American oak for me. But you can taste the brandy sitting on top of that. And as I say, brandy is not a spirit that I'm overly familiar with. I don't tend to drink spirits that much. I'm more into beer, and I like my Japanese sake every so often. A little bit of wine's okay too, although I do enjoy a whiskey now and then. That's probably about as far as I go with the spirits. So yeah, the brandy that you get in this one, it strikes me as being a little bit dry and a little bit kind of spicy and things, but you can certainly taste that sort of dry apricot infusion that it has. That's quite interesting. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really interesting. Yeah, the barrel character and the spirit character in this one definitely linger into the aftertaste, and all the other stuff sits on top of that. You do get a wee bit of, the booziness in this beer is quite apparent, which you might expect, but as I say, it maybe stands out to me a little bit more because I'm not familiar with brandy, generally speaking. But yeah, above the kind of spirit layer on this one, then you've got the cakey side of the beer. So yeah, for me, the cakey side of things is interesting because it has, you get a little bit of that kind of like toasty edge from the cake, the stuff that gets stuck to the baking tray, and then you have this like almost like sponge cakey, brown bready type character in there. Definitely feels like, brandy infused for sure. So it's like a fruit loaf, a brandy soaked like fruit loaf kind of thing. That's your main malty component of the beer, and then above that you start to get the big brown sugary notes out of this one. Just from the taste, I think the beer could have had I think it has had a slightly longer wort boil, because you can feel a wee bit of that leathery brown sugar coming out of this one, which is interesting. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that leathery, brown sugary character sitting in the base with this one, but then you've got a big circle in the middle of your palate there, which gives you, you've got a big circle in the middle of your palate there, and you can feel the leathery brown sugar underneath, but you can feel like a toasty brown sugary layer. Above that, you can feel like a more kind of oily treacle molasses sort of thing to it as well. So yeah, there's like a big concentrated treacle molasses sort of thing in the dead center of your palate. You can feel the booziness there. As you move a little bit further out from that, it kind of mellows up a little bit. So yeah, it mellows out a little bit. Then you get the toasty brown sugars, and then the kind of more kind of leathery stuff underneath actually. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But this beer, it certainly is quite boozy in that sense. But the thing with it being an American strong ale, you do get quite a little bit of bitterness around the edges of your palate too, and we'll come back to that later of course. But this one, it's certainly not quite as sweet as I thought it was going to be. It's still got quite a little bit of bitterness to it, and it's got a good little bit of dryness too actually. So yeah, interesting stuff. I'm guessing, this has obviously been quite a bit more heavily hopped than some of the beers that you would normally put into barrels. But then again, a barley wine is like a big brother of the American double IPA almost. So I wonder, maybe the hop to malt ratio in an American strong ale is different. Food for thought anyway. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate in this one. But certainly, yeah, it's got a good little bit of a more grainy bready character that comes out into the aftertaste too. But let's look at the back third of the palate then. We've covered the middle third. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of, you get a bit more of that kind of sponge cakey character in the base that I was talking about, but then a wee bit more about like a wholemeal brown bready character on top. The base of that back third of the palate is the American oak once again, but again it's a good bit drier than it was before, and then the spirit layer above that's a little bit more kind of almost like spicy and dry as well. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just usually a bit drier, and of course they're going to be at different intensities too. So you can feel like, for me, there's a bit of a bready layer in the base of that back third of your palate, like a kind of wholemeal rye bready sort of thing. Then above that you've got a more sort of sponge cakey type layer, which I do quite like too. But yeah, above all of that, you can feel some of the drier aspects of the brown sugar from this beer just kind of creeping over the top. So that's quite interesting too. So yeah, the drier aspects of the brown sugar in this beer just creep over the top of the back third of the palate, and then you've got all the yeasty characters too. So the yeasty side of this beer is like a dense and slightly sweet rye bread, and then surrounding it you've got a more kind of sweet brandy soaked like wholemeal bread, and then you've got this kind of bread crusty character, and as I say, that sits on top of all of the things going on in that back third of your palate. So yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour. It is definitely taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this one, I think, is really quite nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer is quite interesting, because it's a bit, for me, it's quite unusual, and after 4,000 beer reviews, you want things like this that are going to test your palate. And the American Strong Ale, like I said, is a style that I'm still not madly familiar with, and it's not a very well defined style either, to be honest with you. But yeah, let's focus on the green component then. So as I've said a few times throughout this review, there is still quite a bit of a green component to this beer. In the back corners of your palate, there's certainly a wee bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you've got a little bit of a kind of piney resinous character underneath, and you get a wee bit more of a kind of floral spice as you reach the kind of front corners of your palate. So it would not surprise me at all if this beer is hopped with, like, Columbus, Chinook and Cascade. There's just several characteristics that are setting off my memory in this one. So the piney resin, of course, I think will come from the Chinook, and then the wee bit of floral spice that the beer has, I think, is coming from Columbus. But round the front curve of your palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter, more grassy sort of thing, and there is a wee bit of zestiness to it as well, which I think, again, makes me think of Columbus. So yeah, green component in this one is still present, despite it being barrel aged and a higher percentage beer. But yeah, it's interesting for sure. That's what we can say. Front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a wee bit of the kind of like rye bready character, brown bready character in the base, then the more brandy soaked sponge cakey fruit loaf type thing sitting above that. The base of that front third of your palate, you've got the sweeter side of the kind of oaky vanilla, then you've got a brandy layer, and then you've got a kind of wholemeal, you've got a little bit of that sponge cakey sort of thing, and then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So yeah. So yeah, the fruity side of this one is quite interesting, but it is quite similar to what I described from the aroma earlier. So like at the back of that front third of your palate, you definitely get like a kind of sultana type note out of this one, you know, dry white green grapes. Absolutely some dates as well. There's a little bit of an almost figgy note in the middle of the palate. In the middle of that front third of your palate, you definitely get a little bit of a red fruity character out of this one, but lots of like oily pear, and then maybe just a little hint of like black currant as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate too. So yeah, I think, yeah, sultanas, dates, pears, fig, and a wee bit of like a slight black curranty sort of thing coming out of this too. I think that covers the fruity side of it, to be honest with you. I can feel the booze in this beer going to my head a little bit, and when it's 12%, you know, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, this is lovely. You know, it definitely needs a little bit of time to air out and mellow out. Maybe I could have let this one sit for a wee bit longer and some of the hoppy character would have dropped out. But yeah, the fact that it's an American strong ale barrel aged is unusual enough. And then the fact that it's got American apricot brandy barrels, you know, that was what attracted me to this beer, was that it was so unusual on several counts. But yeah, interesting stuff for sure. So I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. Like I say, the thing that lingers into the aftertaste, you've got some of the barrel and the dry apricot brandy lingering there, but also some of the kind of floral spiciness and the kind of piney resin from what I suspect is Chinook and Columbus in this beer. So yeah, really interesting stuff, and definitely worth trying if you want something a wee bit different. But let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is kind of bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It feels very, very clean, as you often get from Põhjala beers. Not a lot of carbonation. In terms of bitterness, I think this beer actually has a fair little bit of IBU left in it, to be honest with you. It wouldn't surprise me if this was like 60 or 70 IBUs, and obviously with it being in their cellar series, the green component has dropped off a little bit because of the barrel aging, and it will do if you hold on to this beer a little bit longer. But yeah, at this point in time, does it have a bottled on date? Is that what this is? Yeah, it says it was bottled in August 2023, so we're drinking this one when it's maybe about, yeah, just shy of 6 months old. Maybe you could age this a little bit more and let it mellow out a wee bit more. It might benefit from that, come to think of it, but yeah, you still have quite a little bit of hoppy character in this beer when it's 6 months old. But yeah, still, yeah, 60-70 IBUs at this point in time would not surprise me. The malty base, as we said, has a bit of graininess to it, a bit of dryness, and then a kind of more dry sweetness and oily sweetness on top, which I think is quite nice. And then the fruitiness is, you know, like sultanas, dates, pears, stuff like this. Really good stuff. And those kind of drier fruity characters are very fitting with the American strong ale style, if you like, but as I say, not the most well defined. of styles, that's for sure. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to try, one that's tested my palate a little bit. And as I say, after 4,000 reviews, that's exactly what you want. Yeah, if you get a bottle of this, maybe let it age a little bit more. I think I'm drinking it a little bit too soon because the hoppy character could maybe just drop back a little bit more and bring out a wee bit more of the sweetness. Just my personal opinion, you might quite like that. But as I say, the American strong ales are that little bit more hoppy as opposed to, say, a barley wine or something like that. But yeah, really interesting beer, this one, and I have enjoyed reviewing this for you. Definitely cool to try something more random from the Põhjala Cellar series. So yeah, that's that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Põhjala as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future, because their beers do make themselves available here over in Hong Kong quite readily every so often. So yeah, booze on this one really is going to my head. But thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Põhjala's social media. This was the Apricotta, a 12% American strong ale aged in American apricot brandy barrels, and it's been very, very interesting to review. Till the next time, slàinte, skål, cheers, terveyseks, and thank you for watching. Aita.